Picture two houses, same street, same neighborhood, close enough that both families wave at each other pulling out of the driveway in the morning. The first house belongs to Jake. Jake earns $92,000 a year. Walk through his front door and you'll feel it immediately. A large screen television on the wall, a sectional sofa that set him back $3,800, a kitchen that looks like it was designed by someone who watches a lot of cooking shows, an espresso machine, an air fryer, a countertop oven, a blender that costs more than most people's first paychecks. Most of those appliances have been used fewer than 5 times. They sit there looking expensive, which was always part of the point. The garage has a storage system along the back wall, bins, shelves, labeled boxes, full of things Jake bought for phases of his life that never quite materialized. Golf clubs from 3 years ago, a kayak from 2 summers back, a home gym that became a very expensive clothes rack. He rents a storage unit across town for $110 a month to hold the overflow. Jake checks his bank balance the way most people check the weather before a flight, with a low-grade, constant dread. He has $1,900 in savings. He earns $92,000 a year, and he is, by any honest measure, 2 bad months away from a genuine financial crisis. Now walk across the street. Marcus earns $51,000 a year. His living room has a couch, a reasonably sized television, and nothing that doesn't belong there. His kitchen has a good knife, a cast iron pan, and a coffee maker that costs $28 and produces a cup he genuinely enjoys every morning. His closet has clothes in it. Not a wardrobe, not a collection, just clothes, things he wears. Marcus checks his bank account the way you check the time, casually, with no particular anxiety about what it will say. He has 11 months of expenses saved. He puts 18% of every paycheck into investments before it ever touches his checking account. He sleeps without running calculations in his head about whether he can cover next month's rent if the car breaks down. Same street, same neighborhood. The person earning nearly half as much has 6 times the financial security. And here's the thing that makes this genuinely uncomfortable. If you met Jake and Marcus at a dinner, you would assume Jake was winning, because Jake has the visible signals of financial success. The nice stuff, the full house, the lifestyle that reads as prosperous from the outside. But financial security is invisible, and the gap between looking successful and actually being secure is the single most expensive gap in personal finance. By the end of this video, you're going to understand exactly why this keeps happening, what mechanism drives it, and the 6 specific rules that separate the Marcuses of the world from the Jakes, regardless of what either of them earns. My name is Aloys, and this is Aloys Explains Money. Jake is not reckless with money in any obvious way. He does not gamble. He does not have a spending problem that announces itself. He does not make one catastrophic purchase that explains everything. What Jake did was far more common and far more difficult to detect. He let his lifestyle grow with every dollar he earned. Every raise became a reason to upgrade something. Every promotion became permission to spend more. Every bonus became an opportunity to finally get the thing he had been telling himself he deserved. And over time, very slowly, very quietly, his lifestyle expanded to consume every dollar his income produced. Now the lifestyle is in charge. It tells Jake how much he needs to earn. It tells him which jobs he can consider and which ones involve too much risk. It tells him whether he can say no to his boss, take a chance on something new, or walk away from something that is damaging him. The lifestyle makes those decisions for him now, because the lifestyle has a fixed cost that Jake has to meet every single month. Marcus, by contrast, discovered something early that most high earners never figure out until significant damage is already done. Owning less is not the same as having less. Owning deliberately is what creates the gap, the margin between what you earn and what you need, that makes everything else in personal finance actually work. Not the investment strategy, not the index fund allocation, not the retirement account vehicle. The margin, the gap, everything downstream of that gap, the compounding, the wealth building, the financial optionality, is only possible if the gap exists. If the gap doesn't exist, none of it works. You can have the perfect investment portfolio and still be broke because there is nothing left to invest. So why does the gap disappear for so many high earners while persisting for people who appear to earn less? I want to give you a framework that will permanently change how you evaluate every purchase you make from this point forward. I call it the double cost rule. Every single thing you own costs you money twice. The first cost is the one the store shows you. It is the number on the receipt. It is the amount that left your account. Your brain anchors to this number. You use it to decide whether something is worth it. This is the cost everyone sees and almost everyone uses as the only measure of what something costs. But there is a second cost. And for many possessions, the second cost is larger than the first. The second cost has 4 components. First, storage. Every object takes up space. Space costs money. In most cities, residential space costs somewhere between $25 and $45 per square foot annually when you work backward from rent or mortgage payments. A treadmill, with the clearance you need around it to actually use it, takes up roughly 20 square feet. That is between $500 and $900 per year in implicit rent you are paying to house a piece of equipment that, statistically, becomes a laundry station within 4 months of purchase. You are not just buying a treadmill. You are leasing an apartment. Second, maintenance. Every object needs upkeep. It needs to be cleaned, serviced, insured, repaired, updated. A boat sitting in a driveway, not on the water, just sitting there, costs approximately 10% of its purchase value every year to own. A $28,000 boat costs $2,800 per year, even if it never leaves the driveway, even if it collects leaves for 12 months straight. The meter runs whether you use it or not. Third, mental energy. This is the cost nobody puts on a balance sheet, which is precisely why it does so much damage. Every item you own occupies a portion of your cognitive bandwidth. It needs to be tracked, organized, worried about, cleaned around, insured, and eventually gotten rid of. Researchers studying household clutter have documented measurable increases in cortisol, the stress hormone, in people surrounded by visual disorder. Your possessions are quietly taxing your nervous system in ways you cannot consciously perceive. The mental overhead of ownership is real, it is constant, and it accumulates invisibly with every new item you add. Fourth, opportunity cost. This is the one that will genuinely change how you think about money if you let it. Every dollar locked inside a possession is a dollar not working for you. That $11,000 home gym, the one that felt like a smart investment in your health, could have been $11,000 in a broad market index fund. At historical average annual returns of around 8%, that $11,000 becomes roughly $36,000 over 15 years. You did not just buy a home gym. You bought a home gym instead of $36,000. When you add all 4 components together, storage, maintenance, mental energy, opportunity cost, many possessions cost more to own over their lifetime than they cost to purchase. The purchase price was just the entry fee. The ongoing costs run for as long as you hold the item. Most people never add these up because each individual cost feels small enough to dismiss. But small costs sustained over years are precisely how financial security quietly disappears. It is not one big leak. It is 100 small ones running simultaneously that nobody is watching. The Marcuses of the world, the ones who earn less and end up with more, have internalized the double cost rule. Not necessarily on a spreadsheet, not formally, but intuitively they have done this math. And they have decided that most things, when you count the real price, are not worth it. This leads to the first rule that consistently separates people who always have money from people who never do, regardless of income level. Rule 1. Calculate cost per use before every purchase. Before you buy anything, estimate how many times you will realistically use it. Not the optimistic version of yourself. Not the best-case scenario. The honest version of you, in your actual life, with your actual habits and schedule. How many times will you genuinely use this? Divide the total true cost, including the hidden costs, by that number. That is your cost per use. It is the only honest measure of what something is actually worth to you. A $180 jacket you wear 3 times costs $60 per use. A $420 jacket you wear through 3 winters costs around $2 per use. The more expensive jacket is 20 times cheaper in any real sense. Cost per use destroys impulse purchases, because most impulse purchases are items with high per unit cost and low actual usage. That $280 kitchen appliance you will use 4 times a year costs $70 per use. A $25 pan you use 3 times a week costs less than 10 cents per use over the first year. The math cuts through the marketing. It cuts through the emotion in the store. It cuts through the story you tell yourself about who you are going to become once you own the thing. It just shows you clearly what it actually costs you to use it. Cost per use also reveals the genuinely worthwhile purchases. A good mattress used every night for a decade costs under $1 per use and affects your health and cognitive function every single day. Quality shoes worn regularly for years cost almost nothing per use. A reliable car that gets you where you need to go at a low per mile cost is a genuinely good value. The math does not tell you never to spend. It tells you where spending actually makes sense. Rule 2. Apply the replacement test to everything you own. This one requires uncomfortable honesty, which is why most people avoid it entirely. Go through your home. Look at each item. Ask yourself one question. If this item disappeared today, just vanished, would I spend money to replace it? Be honest. Would you actually go buy another bread maker? Would you replace the fondue set that has lived in the back cabinet for 3 years? Would you repurchase those clothes that have not been worn in over a year? Would you order another version of the gadget that has been sitting on the shelf since the package was opened? For the majority of items in most homes, the truthful answer is no. They exist through inertia, not intention. They were impulse purchases that outlived the impulse. Gifts you felt obligated to keep. Remnants of hobbies and phases you have already moved through. These items have negative value. They cost you space, mental energy, and maintenance while contributing nothing in return. And every hour spent organizing around them, cleaning around them, or simply having them occupy corner space in your awareness is an hour taken from something that actually matters to you. The people who consistently end up with more money than their income would predict are not just careful about what they buy. They actively clear out what they would not replace. They sell what has value. They donate what someone else can use. They discard what serves nobody. And the result is not deprivation. The result is clarity. The psychological relief of owning only things you actually want is immediate and significant. Decisions get simpler. Maintenance drops. You stop losing track of things because everything remaining has a reason to be there. Rule 3. Never upgrade out of boredom. This is the rule that quietly costs most high earners somewhere between $150,000 and $300,000 over a lifetime. Not in one purchase, in an unbroken chain of individually reasonable seeming decisions. The television works fine, but the new model has improved contrast. The phone operates perfectly, but the latest version has a marginally better camera. The car runs reliably, but the new year model has updated trim. The furniture does its job, but you have simply grown tired of looking at it. Each of these upgrades feels like progress. It feels like treating yourself. It feels like a reasonable use of income you work hard to earn. What it actually is, compounded across decades, is wealth destruction disguised as lifestyle maintenance. The people who always have financial margin operate by a simple and clear policy. They do not replace things that still work. The phone that makes calls, handles messages, and runs the apps you actually use does not need to be replaced because a newer phone exists. The car that reliably gets you from one place to another does not need to be replaced because someone on your street bought something with a different badge. The couch that is still structurally sound and comfortable does not need replacing because a catalog arrived with something you like slightly better. Here is what the numbers look like over time. The average person replaces their phone every 2 to 3 years, often while the previous phone still functions. Over 30 years, that pattern represents $30,000 to $50,000 in unnecessary spending before you account for the compounded investment returns that money could have generated. Apply the same upgrade logic to vehicles, furniture, appliances, and wardrobe, and a lifetime total easily exceeds $200,000. $200,000. Not from irresponsibility, not from one bad decision, from a long, quiet series of socially acceptable upgrades that each felt completely justified in the moment. The people who avoid this trap define broken differently than everyone else. Something needs replacing when it genuinely cannot perform its required function. Not when a newer version exists. Not when boredom has set in. Not when someone else has something better. Actual failure to perform the actual task. That is the only valid trigger for replacement. Everything else is marketing engineered to manufacture a problem you do not have. Rule 4. Engineer friction into spending and ease into saving. Human behavior follows the path of least resistance. This is not a flaw. It is simply how the brain conserves energy. And if the path of least resistance in your financial life leads towards spending, you will spend, regardless of your intentions, your values, or your goals. Willpower is not a reliable financial strategy because willpower is a depleting resource. It erodes throughout the day. It collapses under stress, fatigue, and emotion, precisely the conditions under which most impulse purchases happen. A system built on willpower will eventually fail. A system built on structure will not, because it removes the decision entirely. Spending friction looks like this. You delete stored payment information from every online retailer so that every purchase requires manually entering card details. You install a 48-hour waiting rule on every non-essential purchase. If you still want it 2 days later, you can reconsider. You remove shopping applications from your phone. You stop opening promotional emails entirely. You only enter a store when you have a specific, pre-decided item to purchase. Saving ease looks like this. Automatic transfers to investment accounts are scheduled for the same day as every paycheck before the money touches your checking account. You keep minimal amounts in accessible accounts, so the money you might casually spend is not casually available. You treat savings contributions as a fixed expense, as non-negotiable as rent, not as something that happens with whatever is left at the end of the month. These structural changes consistently outperform intention, motivation, and willpower because they work at the level of the system rather than the level of the moment. The 48-hour rule alone eliminates roughly 70% of impulse purchases, not because you become disciplined enough to resist them, but because most desires for objects dissolve on their own within 24 hours if they are not acted on immediately. The wanting was rarely about the object. It was about the momentary emotional payoff of deciding to buy. Remove the ability to act on that impulse instantly, and the desire usually disappears without requiring any effort from you at all. Rule 5. Define enough before your income grows. This is the trap that catches the highest earners most completely, and it is the exact mechanism that explains how Jake earns $92,000 and has $1,900 saved. Jake never defined what enough looks like. So every income increase became an invitation to redefine the baseline upward. Every raise purchased a slightly larger version of the life he was already living. The lifestyle became the finish line, and the finish line moved with every paycheck. There's research on this pattern. People earning $300,000 per year report experiencing financial stress at rates comparable to people earning $80,000. Not because $300,000 is insufficient to live well, because their expectations and expenses have expanded in lockstep with every income increase, and the margin, the gap, never forms regardless of how much they earn. The people who build real wealth define enough before the income grows. They decide in advance what kind of home is genuinely sufficient, what level of transportation meets their actual needs, what standard of material comfort represents real satisfaction rather than an endlessly moving target. Then they earn past that target, and everything above it goes toward building wealth rather than maintaining a lifestyle that keeps expanding. This might mean deciding that a $280,000 home is enough, even when you could eventually afford $480,000. That a reliable $22,000 car is what you need, even when colleagues drive vehicles that cost 3 times that. That your current living situation is genuinely adequate, even as your income could support something more visible. Defining enough creates a finish line. Without it, You're in a race where the track keeps extending no matter how fast you run. With it, you arrive at a point where additional income has nowhere to go except toward building actual wealth. The person who defines enough at $46,000 of annual spending and then earns $85,000 builds wealth at a rate that most high earners will never experience. $39,000 per year flowing directly toward financial freedom, every year compounding. Meanwhile, someone earning the same $85,000 who never defines a finish line might save almost nothing because the lifestyle finds every available dollar and puts it to work maintaining itself. The difference between these two people is not income. It is not intelligence. It is not even discipline in the conventional sense. It is whether they decided before the money arrived what enough actually means. Rule 6. Measure wealth by optionality, not accumulation. The conventional mental model of wealth is about what you have. Houses, vehicles, possessions, visible markers that signal financial success to the outside world. The people who actually have money measure wealth differently. They measure it by what they can choose. Can you leave a job that is slowly damaging your health without financial catastrophe? Can you take 3 months away from work to handle a family emergency? Can you move cities for a relationship, a career pivot, a new chapter? Can you say no to an opportunity that pays well but costs you something more important? Can you absorb a significant unexpected expense without it threatening your entire financial position? These choices, this optionality, are what real wealth actually consists of. And optionality only exists for people who have maintained the gap between what they earn and what they spend. Jake earns $92,000. He spends $90,000. His optionality is almost zero. He cannot take a pay cut. He cannot absorb a disruption. He cannot say no to his income source because his lifestyle depends on every dollar of it. The lifestyle has made him a prisoner of his own earnings. Marcus earns $51,000. He spends $33,000. His optionality is extraordinary relative to his income. He can absorb disruptions. He can make decisions based on what he actually wants rather than what the math forces him to accept. He can take career risks because a bad quarter will not destroy him. He can say no, which means every yes he gives is genuinely chosen. Every purchase is a trade. You're not exchanging money for an object. You are exchanging the ability to make free choices about your life for the ability to possess something. The question that people who always have money ask before every purchase is not just, can I afford this? The question is this worth reducing my freedom? Sometimes the answer is clearly yes. A home in a neighborhood where you genuinely want to raise a family. Reliable transportation that removes real friction from your life. Quality food that supports your health over decades. These purchases deserve yes. But the fourth streaming service that you added because canceling felt like effort, the upgraded phone that performs the same functions as the one already in your pocket, the wardrobe expansion driven by the fact that your income grew and you felt like you should look like it did, when you frame the purchase as a trade against your freedom, most of those decisions become very simple. Now let me tell you something that most financial content will not tell you. The relationship between owning less and having more money is not one-directional. It does not just flow from owning less to having more. It runs the other way too. When your savings account reaches a level that actually provides security, the urge to accumulate possessions diminishes. The psychological need that drives most consumption, the need to feel secure, to signal status, to feel like you're doing well, gets satisfied by real financial strength rather than by the visible artifacts of it. When your bank account tells you the story you want to hear, you stop needing your possessions to tell it for you. Most people trapped in consumption cycles cannot explain why they keep spending. The honest answer is usually that spending fills an emotional gap that genuine financial insecurity creates. Fix the insecurity through actual financial strength, and the compulsion often resolves on its own. This creates a cycle that reinforces itself in the right direction. Spending less leads to saving more. Saving more produces real security. Real security reduces the emotional pressure to spend. Reduced spending accelerates saving further. Each rotation of the cycle builds on the last. The opposite cycle is equally self-reinforcing, and it is equally powerful in the wrong direction. Spending everything produces insecurity. Insecurity drives more spending as temporary emotional relief. More spending deepens the insecurity. The cycle continues until some external disruption forces a breaking point. That breaking point is usually painful. The choice between these two cycles determines financial trajectory more reliably than income ever could. High earners locked in the destructive cycle build nothing. Modest earners running the virtuous cycle build everything. The 6 rules I have laid out are not instructions for deprivation. Research on life satisfaction consistently shows that beyond a genuine baseline of comfort and security, additional purchases contribute almost nothing to well-being. Yet most people spend as if happiness increases linearly with spending. It does not. And the people who seem to always have more money than you, even when they earn less, are simply the people who understood that first. Marcus, across the street from Jake, is not living a smaller life. He is living a more deliberate one. And deliberate living is the single thing that financial security is actually built on. The first house, Jake's, belongs to someone who never examined the assumption that more income means more stuff, and more stuff means a better life. The assumption went unquestioned for years, and now the assumption owns him. The second house, Marcus's, belongs to someone who looked at that assumption carefully, found it false, and built something real on the other side of it. Both options are available to you, regardless of what you currently earn. The only question is whether you want to own your possessions or whether you're willing to let your possessions own you. If this breakdown was useful, subscribe to Aloys Explains Money. The next video goes even deeper into the mechanics of how high earners consistently lose the long game to people who earn far less, and exactly what to do if you recognize yourself in this one. I'll see you there.